Chapter 55. The stone gate, carved out of a massive boulder, was not meant to be opened by human strength. It was fine to regard it simply as a piece of rock to prevent intruders from opening it. But Suitl definitely heard it. The sound of the stone door twisting and moving. Ooh! Johan's forearm swelled as the giant stone wall began to slowly roll to the side. Suit couldn't close his gaping mouth. My goodness, oh divine! A miracle that even a wizard like Suitl would seek the divine. Johan, sweating profusely, pushed the door open. Fortunately, it's open. We are lucky. Suitgnim? Snap out of it. Regaining his senses, Suitl quickly gave an order. Ensure the mercenaries cannot enter. The fewer eyes, the better. I'll only take my slaves inside. Are you sure? It would be okay for me to go alone. No. That would be too unfair to you. I'll protect my own body. And don't worry about secrets. Their mouths are special. Suitl's slaves had undergone a special procedure, something Johan had guessed. Deciding to ask later, Johan spoke softly. How suspicious are you planning to be? Enough that the mercenaries shouldn't see. In exchange, I swear to repay you properly, in the name of Ipel River. I always liked the Ipel River. Johan and Suitg exchanged meaningful smiles. Whether it was a pagan temple or anything else, if there was something useful, they would surely take it. A corridor. Johan and Suitg, having entered through a passage behind the stone wall, marveled at the expansive hallway before them. To find such a well-constructed building hidden within these remote mountain cliffs was astonishing. Alongside the corridor stood statues they had never seen before. Suitg commented on each one as they passed. A pantheon. During the ancient empire era, people worshipped many gods. Isn't it fascinating? Well, it's possible to believe, isn't it? Your lackluster reaction takes the fun out of it. Anyway, they must have hidden here to pray. Look at this. Isn't it beautiful? This god might have been a warrior deity. Or perhaps the god of drunken brawlers. Suitl scowled. After hearing Johan's words, the statue indeed began to look that way. But, Suitlgnim. What is it? Don't you think the strange behavior of the goblins is related to this pagan temple? It might be, but it's too quiet for that, isn't it? I don't sense any presence. It might be unrelated. Karamaf let out a low growl. In response, footsteps emerged from the darkness, and 3 figures appeared. The zealots, clad in peculiar religious robes, held torches. Ooh! Intruders! The zealots seemed more frightened than Johan and Suitg. From their perspective, they had encountered armed intruders unexpectedly. How did you get in here? Suitg empathized with their reaction. Honestly, he would have thought the same in their shoes. A well-hidden secret door. Under normal circumstances, it would have taken days to open it, by which time those inside would have noticed. I understand why you're surprised. Attack them. Regardless of the opponent's surprise, an attack was necessary, especially since those dwelling in such a pagan temple couldn't be sane. How dare these corrupted ones? The zealots, enraged, drew short swords from their waists. Sensing an evil aura in the flickering shadows, Suitl shouted in astonishment. Be careful! They have magical aura. Suitl's slaves, though not as strong as Johan, were skilled swordsmen. As they clashed with the zealots, they immediately disrupted their balance and aimed for vital points. However, the zealots appeared to be less skilled in sword fighting. As their swords met, they floundered. But as Suitl said, they were imbued with magic. A thunk sound was heard as a sword slashed a zealot's throat, but he did not fall. The shadow quickly spread over the zealot's body, wrapping around the neck to prevent bleeding. The zealot's eyes reddened, and his face darkened. I shall not die. While the slave hesitated, Johan's mace flew in, blowing the zealot's head off. Doesn't he come back to life? He's dead. Wait. Johan crushed another frozen zealot's head. Whatever magic they had, it seemed to withstand only slashed wounds, so decapitation was more effective. No need for such brutality if they're not trolls. Should have said so earlier. As they finished off the zealots, goblins appeared from the other end of the corridor, wearing metal armor and wielding spears, looking quite formidable. Johan lifted his mace, soaked in goblin blood from this campaign. Sensing its ominous aura, the goblins flinched. Come. With those words, Johann, like an avatar of violence, charged at the goblins. How could the strike force possibly? The wizard, with a face mired in confusion, was ready to flee. All the zealots in this secret temple were in turmoil, including their leader, the wizard. A sudden ambush, a frantic fight, anyone would have to brace for the worst. The intruders were few, but there was no way to know that. Where do you think you are going? We must escape. But didn't Naranim promise to protect this place? Nara, the god of shadows and blood, had existed since the ancient empire but was now forbidden in most places. Already disliked by other churches, Nara's teachings were excessively cruel and barbaric. He is protecting us. If he's protecting us, how did the strike force get in here? Gods can be capricious at times. Just shut up and follow. The wizard looked at Zerbo with annoyance. He would have discarded him long ago if not for his status. Among those in the temple, Zerbo was the most useful. The illegitimate child of the Abner family. Illegitimate children were treated worse than younger legitimate siblings. It wasn't hard to entice such a disgruntled man into joining the cult. Although Zerbo had little to offer, his access to other nobles was crucial. He couldn't be discarded yet. Even if the strike force follows, they won't enter here. I've unleashed the shadow monster. It's a kind of revelation from Nara. Move. Understood. Zerbo prepared to follow the wizard but looked nonchalant. Initially tempted by the wizard, Zerbo now doubted his reliability. What if they were shot by the blind with arrows outside? Perhaps it was better to reveal his identity and surrender. Slap! Sensing his thoughts, the wizard lashed out with his whip. The black whip writhed as if alive, leaving the ground where it passed pitch black. Didn't I tell you to move? I said I understood. Move? Where? Johann entered the room, growling, covered in the blood of his enemies. His exposed eyes blazed with a fierce fire. Johann, who had killed goblins indiscriminately and headed to the wizard's chamber under Karamaf's guidance, encountered a monster he had never seen before. A four-legged monster as if draped in dark shadows. But upon closer inspection, parts of the creature resembled a goblin. It was unclear what had been done to the goblins, but the mere sight of it exuded an evil aura. Give Johann the silver sword! Suitg shouted sharply. Then, a slave hurriedly pulled out and threw a sword. It was a blade coated with silver. Indeed, silver always works against evil beings. Johann grabbed the sword and viciously slashed the monster's torso. The blood from the monster's torso made a noxious sound as it burned the ground. Johann clicked his tongue at the creaking durability of the silver sword. What a weak weapon. What are you talking about? That's a sturdy weapon. What are you doing? Help Johann. Don't come. It's better to fight alone. Fighting the monster with these uncoordinated allies was more of a hindrance. The greatest strength of the shadow monster was its unknown identity. Whether beating it was effective, or if it was safe to touch it. This was what hindered Johann's charge. Sensing Johann's hesitation, the monster grew increasingly ferocious. Johann made up his mind. Facing an unknown enemy, his most confident attack was indeed the seal retriever. Suitg was neither someone to distrust nor to accuse. Above all, they both held too many of each other's weaknesses. Johann fiercely threw the silver sword at the monster, whipping its long forelegs. What are you doing? Thud! Synced with the monster's scream, Johann charged forward. In his hand was another long sword, the ancient empire's famous sword. With each flash of the sword, the monster convulsed and bled. The embedded silver sword shone brighter, inflicting more damage on the creature. Johann spat. The seal retriever seemed to shake off the monster's filthy blood, becoming clean again. Suitg said. By the name of the Ipel River, I swear to silence about what I just saw. You don't need to swear for me to believe. At Johann's words, Suitg almost burst into emotion, momentarily forgetting his age. This young knight had a talent for moving people in strange ways. Though the sword story was unknown, its rare use implied a significant past. And yet, he wielded it without hesitation. So, what is this monster? I don't know everything. It seems to have done something to the goblins. Hurry! We mustn't lose the wizard. As soon as he saw Johann, the wizard attempted to recite a strange spell. At that moment, Johann's seal retriever flashed and beheaded the wizard. The shadows and spells protecting the wizard's body were torn apart in one strike, killing him. Well done! Suitl admired it. Although there was never anything good in having long conversations with wizards, those who encountered wizards always inadvertently heard such words. Those who handle magic deal with the deepest secrets and mysteries. The voices of those who know the truth inevitably have more persuasive power than ordinary people. But Johann, seemingly uninterested, beheaded him right away. It was a refreshingly good judgment. I am the son of Countess Abner. I demand a fair trial. The Abner family will not forgive you for touching me. Kill him. Suitl coldly ordered. Then, the slaves following him swung their swords. In an instant, the nobleman's bastard was reduced to a bloody heap and fell. The wizard, I get it, but why him? Because he saw your sword. Chapter 56. Suitl was flawless. The face was unfamiliar, and the fact that he was said to be Countess Abner's son suggested he was either an impostor or a bastard. Either way, there was no good in keeping him alive. It would only incur Countess Abner's enmity for no reason. Even if to kill, it would have been better to extract information first. What would such a kid know anyway? Probably just foolishly used. It's already been a hassle delaying this long, and it would get more complicated if someone from above comes in. The moment someone else from above saw this man, neither Johann nor Suitl could hastily kill him. Especially with Stephen outside. In this chaotic situation, it was essential to make sure he was dead. Suitl was thorough in this regard. You don't think Countess Abner is involved, do you? I doubt it. If she were, she would have sent a punitive force, wouldn't she? That's a relief at least. Let's hope she didn't care much for the bastard. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a place to begin with. The slaves crushed the bastard's face and destroyed anything that could identify him. Meanwhile, Suitl searched the wizard's body. As expected, he was studying blood magic. Blood-related magic was referred to as blood magic. Among various magical fields, magic dealing with blood was particularly considered ominous and evil. And then there were the shadows. Even the most talented wizards couldn't get proper recognition if they dealt with such magic. Do you have any idea what he was planning to do with these monsters? Wizards are human too. Probably planned to sell them to nobles. Even at the risk of being excommunicated. If they don't get caught, that's the end of it. The church tends to be more lenient towards nobles, doesn't it? The life of a wizard unrecognized in public was miserable. Magic was a study that consumed all kinds of wealth, and without a patron, research was difficult. Especially blood magic required many sacrifices. A wizard studying such magic would have desired a strong patron. Regardless of right or wrong, many nobles wanted powerful monsters infused with magic. Search the surroundings. Take out anything useful. We must search thoroughly before anyone arrives. The slaves moved busily. Soon, people would enter, and the temple would be completely burnt down. They had to gather anything useful before that. The first thing Suitl prioritized was the wizard's research papers. For a wizard who could perceive mysteries, these papers were more precious than gold. Suitl frowned. Even among wizards who explored mysteries, there were differences in methods. This wizard's methods were those of a lunatic. Feeding goblins to each other to strengthen them, collecting their blood for evil spells, controlling beasts. The ultimate plan was to mix the strengthened goblins and beasts to create a robust monster. The monster encountered in the temple corridor was the result of this. It was not maintained properly, but its combat power was indeed threatening. Is this an Empire University bracelet? Not surprising. There aren't many places to learn magic in the first place. There weren't many places to learn the mysteries of magic. Suitl was lucky to learn the secrets of the Ipel River passed down from his master, but not everyone was that fortunate. Yet, if one still desired to learn magic, they had to seek it anywhere. One such place was the Empire University. Empire University, a hall of various disciplines such as law, astronomy, medicine, alchemy, theology, and numerology, was one of the most advanced educational institutions. Young intellectuals from across the continent traveled great distances to reach it. Do they teach magic? Hardly. Magic isn't that easy. If you're lucky, you might find just the tip of it. This fellow here did the same. What about universities in other cities? Whether it's Erlands or Catalia, it's the same. Magic isn't something you can learn just anywhere. Surely you're not still harboring the vain hope of learning magic. Does this Empire University bracelet sell for a high price? Changing the subject. It's more of a symbolic item, not a costly one. Rather, this ring would be better. Look, this ring. It would be best if you took it. Eh? Why offer such a suspicious? No, it's not that suspicious. Suitlig wiped the ring with his robe before tossing it to Johann. The copper ring held a dark abyss at its center, which strangely flickered if stared at continuously. Cleverly encapsulated shadows. If it breaks, darkness will spread around. Good for deception. Why didn't you use it? Because you'd blow your head off. Ah. Johann gratefully accepted it. Although he didn't know the extent, he figured it would be useful. There's some gold from the Erland's kingdom. Take this too. Oh, can I really take all this? I swore to repay you properly. Compared to this research, it's nothing. To a wizard, mysteries and secrets were more valuable than gold. It didn't matter much to give these to Johann. Suitlig was frustrated. Searching this heretical temple was somewhat risky for Johann too. If a promise was made, it needed to be honored accordingly. But nothing useful was in sight. This wizard seemed to have delved only into evil magic, owning things that were ominous or cursed. In contrast, Johann was at ease. In fact, he had little intention of getting his investment back. He had already gained enough. Just succeeding in the subjugation, which had failed numerous times before, was enough. Besides, more gold would soon come. An anxious wizard and a leisurely knight. It was the knight who made an unusual discovery. Johann noticed a red leather belt hanging on the wall and asked, "What is this?" Don't touch it for a moment." Suitlig cautiously picked it up, swung it a few times, and clicked his tongue. Really trivial research. What is it? A weapon suited for an assassin. Desperate as one might be, creating such a thing to sell to nobles. The red leather belt transformed into a whip-like weapon when swung with force, draining blood from its target. It was an assassin's tool. Suitlig sighed, saddened by the desperate intent of the cornered wizard. Such a thing is not even worth giving to you. No, I'll make good use of it. The news that Johann had successfully completed the subjugation was immediately delivered to Count's ears. It was surprising enough that the several failed subjugations had succeeded, but what was more surprising were the people behind it. The report of the subjugation of the group left Countess Abner with no choice but to shake her expression. It was a background she truly hadn't anticipated. The vassals, who were equally astonished, regained their senses and exclaimed, "Congratulations, Countess! What could be the reason for the previous failed subjugations to succeed? It must be that God has chosen you, Countess. I have always thought that Sir Stephen was a brave and outstanding knight. I am overjoyed that such an opportunity has come to prove it. Stop talking nonsense." The noble who had opened his mouth at Countess Abner's cold words blushed and had to bow his head. If Sir Stephen had the opportunity to show his ability, he would have shown it long ago. Don't make unnecessary remarks. The matter now is about Johann. Honestly, it was good news that Stephen played an active role, but Countess Abner was not foolish enough to be deceived now. The success of this subjugation was entirely due to Johann's ability. She thought that she should have placed Stephen among credible knights earlier. But now, such assumptions were meaningless. The monks sent by Bishop Moshe were lurking around the fiefdom. Ordinarily, I would have immediately expelled them and protested, but this time is different. I should send a messenger to express gratitude and make a donation. The vassals wore dissatisfied expressions. Normally, meddling in someone else's fiefdom, even if done by a bishop, was not something that could be overlooked. But the situation was different this time. Since the monks had subjugated the heretics, it would have been an affront to the countess's dignity if she did not express gratitude. Generosity and piety were virtues of nobility. "Countess, someone from the church has come to see you." "Let them in." A priest entered with a respectful demeanor, unfazed by the scornful looks of the nobles. If he were to be deterred by the gaze of lower nobles without fiefdoms, he wouldn't have been able to be a priest. "We are grateful for this subjugation, and Bishop Moshe sends his thanks. Without the countess's decisive action, the subjugation would have been impossible. We plan to send a priest back to Hinecut town to care for the people, hoping for the countess's magnanimity. Please show mercy." Countess Abner, who was puzzled by the speech, realized the situation and cursed Stephen. Stephen had reported too briefly. He reported finding all the goblin dens and that the monks came to subjugate the heretics, leading Countess Abner to assume. But now, it was clear that the heretics were also wiped out by the subjugation team. The priest's words made it even more certain. It was a duty that naturally had to be done. I will consider sending a priest positively. Thank you, Your Grace. The priest politely stepped back as if he had come in. As the worries turned into luck, the expressions of the spirits present brightened. What used to be a matter of owing a debt to the church had now become something that could be approached with enthusiasm. When Sir Stephen returns, he shall be rewarded. Let the treasurer prepare according to custom. Yes. Upon witnessing this, the nobles thought to themselves. However, contrary to the nobles' worries, Countess Abner was unfazed. While she may have overestimated Johann, she never did so with Stephen. Are you sure about this? After the vassals had left, the head butler asked cautiously. Among the vassals, the head butler held a high-ranking position. This position entailed managing the fiefdom and even acting as a representative in the lord's absence. Naturally, Countess Abner knew what she had given to Stephen. Now that the campaign was successful, Stephen would certainly try to use the tax rights. After all, that was the purpose of starting the campaign. And if Ulrika Gong found out? I have made my decision. The rest is up to Sir Stephen. Even if Ulrika Gong kills him, I won't concern myself. Yes. Understood. However, delivering this letter wouldn't be a bad idea. Deliver this letter to Sir Johann. I will do so. Though often deemed heartless, Stephen was an exception. Indeed, Stephen was favored by the Countess. Johann and the expedition force were preparing to return with high morale. Calling out the hidden villagers, repairing the town, and burning down the temple in front of the clergy. Having completed these tasks, it was time to return. Repairing the town wasn't necessarily a duty of mercenaries, but they followed Johann's command without much complaint. Sometimes, orders could be given without gold. Are you really going to meet Ulrika? As I said, negotiating with Ulrika is the priority. Other matters come after. The best candidate to sell the tax rights to was Ulrika. Of course, she was also the one most likely to be enraged upon learning the truth, but Johann believed that if Ulrika understood the situation properly, she would engage in the deal. Unlike Stephen, she had that level of intelligence. Chapter 57. The problem was that Ulrika Gong's focus was not on Countess Abner's territory. Ulrika Gong was leading an army on a campaign. How long has it been since the last war ended? It's not that surprising. In this world, war was as routine as sleeping and eating. Soldiers were mobilized and battles fought for all sorts of reasons. Suitk said with a grim expression. Do nobles like war? What surprises me is the timing. It's winter now. Wars typically started in spring, battles were fought in summer, and enemy fiefdoms were plundered in autumn. Starting a war in winter was foolish, as it was difficult to find food for the army. The ones who started this must have a reason. Sure, like the wizard who got his head chopped off. Everyone has a reason, even that knight over there. Though Suitk thought differently, Johann was also pondering this. Ulrika Gong, as the heir to the Countess, had already received several fiefdoms as her property upon becoming an adult. She was not incapable of mobilizing an army. The reason was guessable. The Abner family had suffered losses because of Count Jarpen and wanted compensation, no matter the adversary. But wasn't the timing too soon? When an army is hastily raised, it usually indicates a strong motive. Johann was curious about what Ulrika Gong was relying on. Especially now when he had to meet and say. It's good that you're going with mercenaries. Never go alone if you don't want to die like a dog. Suitlig's obvious advice sounded ominously. But not all the news was ominous. A messenger who suddenly visited Johann was an example. What is it? Countess Abner sent me. After following the custom of praising Sir Stephen, rewarding him, and granting rewards to the successful mercenaries, the messenger finally approached Johann. The wax-sealed letter contained a simple message. Johann's face grew complicated. What did the Countess mean by sending this? Johann was currently on his way to negotiate with Ulrika. If the negotiations with Ulrika failed and Johann turned to other forces, Stephen's chance of survival would decrease, not knowing Johann's situation. Ulrika's inaction was only when Stephen remained passive, it changed when it involved her inheritance. Ulrika, please conclude this matter without harming Stephen. But one thing was certain. Countess Abner was still strong and creating a debt would be quite beneficial. And this? Johann received a certificate from the messenger, redeemable at a trading house. I don't have any compensation to receive from the Countess. What does this mean? She said it's a personal token of gratitude. I see. Well, I'll keep that in mind. Johann suddenly envied Stephen. Apart from intelligence, wasn't luck something one was born with? Countess Abner's territory lies to the east of Sangdaju Castle. Nestled among the mountains, it's a vital transit point for those traveling from the west to the heart of the empire. Historically, the lords of Sangdaju Castle have had several frictions with the Abner family. The castle's ability to challenge the Abners, who control several fiefdoms, stemmed from a single reason: a powerful backing. The territory of Sangdaju Castle was directly granted by the emperor of the empire. Influential feudal lords might scoff at the emperor, but that doesn't mean the emperor is powerless. The emperor, like the feudal lords, also had his own set of powers, just not as prominently proclaimed. After all, one couldn't buy the support of the prime nobles with gold if they weren't a feudal lord themselves. But now, Ulrika Gong is sweeping through the Castellan's territory, seemingly unconcerned about such matters. A wise choice. The village chief trembled, prostrating himself. In front of him lay a pile of silver coins, scraped together from the town. This tribute was originally meant for the feudal lord, but now, an angry army glinted at the town's edges. At Ulrika Gong's command, the town could be set ablaze in an instant. Ultimately, the blame lay with the feudal lord who failed to protect them. Why else would they loyally offer tributes and labor? They're not coming out, are they? No. They didn't even have time to hire mercenaries, just sent a warning message. Assholes. They still don't understand the situation. After plundering, we head to Sangdaju Castle. I want to see the Castellan's face myself. The army roared in response to Ulrika Gong's cry. An employer who offered gold and plentiful plunder was always popular. This feels familiar. Shut up. Stephen reddened and growled at Johann's remark. The situation indeed mirrored a past one. The situation when they were absurdly defeated while besieging Count Jarpen's Bosan Castle. Although Sangdaju Castle was smaller and less fortified than Bosan Castle, a castle was still a castle. The army could only besiege it, not daring to attack. Stephen's army seemed loose and full of gaps, but Ulrika Gong's forces were the exact opposite. Even at a glance, it's over 1,000. That's right. It's better to be cautious. Ulrika clearly has the support of the Erland's royal family. A source of confidence that allowed you to be indifferent whether the emperor was behind you or not. That was the only thing you had as a feudal lord. Is that true? It might not be, but there aren't many places where Ulrika could get support. Besides, everyone knows that King Erland is interested in the empire's situation. Your misfortune is my happiness. The King of Erland would be very pleased if the Holy Empire Emperor and the feudal lords clashed. And the Empress, as you know, has made too many enemies. Too many urgent fires to fight to intervene here. But inaction will erode his authority. A dilemma. But it's all self-inflicted. While they whispered, knights came out to meet them in the camp, cautious due to Johann and Stephen's status. Please, come inside. Isn't that too rude? Suetig spoke with a calm fury. Inside the tent, crossbowmen with loaded crossbows and armed knights stood firm, ready to throw themselves in the way if necessary. There was no custom of welcoming a visitor in such a manner. Forgive my rudeness. I'm a bit cowardly. Ulrika responded without batting an eye. From her perspective, it was natural. It was widely rumored that the foolish Stephen, relying solely on his name, had been caught by an unarmed knight. She did not want to become the second fool of the family. You should have been moderate. Let's not argue about right and wrong here. Responding to Suetlug's whispered words, Johann walked forward. There was never an intention to take hostages, but now it seemed certainly impossible. Have you been well, Ulrika Gong? I've been fine, Sir Johann. Pleased to see you like this. Johann scanned Ulrika's face. It was definitely bright and cheerful. Indeed, telling Stephen was a clearer message than 100 words. Knowing there was no further loss of wealth, her composure was understandable. It felt like dampening someone's good mood. Regret it. You should have accepted my offer. We could have been so happy. Ulrika's words puzzled Suitlik, while Stephen's face reddened with anger and fear. Only Johann and Stephen understood the meaning of that proposal here. But the chance is over. Opportunities are like arrows, once shot, they can't be caught again. Hope your upheld honor is worth it. It wasn't exactly for honor. Enough, answer first. It's a rejection. Obvious. Stephen's thoughts. Failed in monster subjugation, but doesn't want to go to the silent monastery, so he thought of leading mercenaries under me as a workaround. But it's not necessary. Suitlik, listening, asked. Wouldn't over 200 mercenaries be helpful? It would be nice. But I don't want to be associated with that incompetent knight. Take the mercenaries and leave. Come back without that knight next time. Ulrika pointed at Stephen. 200 mercenaries would be helpful, but she didn't want to give even a slight honor to Stephen. Unwanted and disliked. That was Stephen. Ulrika gong. What? Anything else to say? First, a correction: the subjugation was successful. For the first time, Stephen felt triumphant. Ulrika's expression justified it. I thought I would let it go. Definitely. I underestimated your ability. It dawned that the philosopher from Ipel River couldn't have been called by Stephen. Surely, it was Johann's doing. Thank you. So? You came to boast about your successful subjugation. The following conversation. I'd like to have it more privately. Ulrika Nim. The tent flap was pushed aside, and a mercenary captain rushed in. Sangdaju Castle is ready to surrender. Thanks to that, the private meeting with Johann was postponed. The Castellan was ready to surrender, so naturally, that had to be addressed first. That was quicker than expected. It's thanks to Ulrika Nim's command. I just waited doing nothing, so spare me the useless flattery. Her tone was cynically similar to Countess Abner's. But it wasn't entirely wrong. The surrounded Castellan had limited options: either resist to death or surrender. The Lord of Sangdaju Castle chose the latter. The castle gates opened, and a delegation bearing a white flag emerged. Ulrika, unknowingly, smiled. In such a situation, no one could help but smile. The surrender documents. Here they are. The envoys' faces were dark and haggard. It was natural, having resisted under siege before coming out to surrender. Ulrika signaled with her chin, and her subordinates began to read the documents. Meanwhile, Johann was blankly spectating from behind. Stephen asked cautiously. Do you think the negotiations will go well? Well, logically, it should, but people don't think with just their brains. Shouldn't you have been more careful about making enemies? It's not like I wanted to make them. Being foolish is also a sin. If it were me, I would have been careful even while breathing. Enough of this pointless talk. There are many ears around. At Suitlug's words, Johann nodded. Speaking here was pointless anyway. The negotiation would be decided in the meeting with Ulrika. Johann sent something off in the envoy's expressions. It was a familiar look. In that moment, Johann realized why their expression seemed familiar. Gerdulf. Yes, sir. Lead the mercenaries and block the left flank. Before finishing his sentence, Johann dashed off like a madman. There was no time to find and mount a horse. Their expressions were familiar because they had the same thought as Johann had before. Ambush. However, the meaning was the opposite. Johann, in front of others, built a just cause while flaunting the honor of a knight. As the cause was with Johann, the knights present accepted it. But these people came out as surrendering envoys and were attempting to ambush. Such an act was dishonorable enough to not deserve noble treatment. Even Ulrika hadn't expected the opponent to stoop to such levels. Ulrika. What? Have you lost your mind? Ulrika, recognizing Johann's voice, turned her head in disbelief. Calling her without formalities, were they that close? Get back. What nonsense are you? Ulrika stopped mid-sentence, a chill running through her mind. Capture Ulrika Gong. The haggard delegation drew their weapons. With a beast-like ferocity, they lunged at Ulrika. Chapter 58. The delegation was not even wearing proper armor. This was to lower Ulrika's guard. Moreover, there were only about a dozen of them. They would easily be crushed if Ulrika's fiercely positioned army attacked. However, all of that would change if they captured Ulrika. Ulrika, coming forward to receive the surrendered delegation. All they needed to do was capture Ulrika somehow. Only a few knights and scribes, who were off their guard, were around Ulrika. They could capture her with a surprise attack. Damn it! The man leading the delegation as the envoy gritted his teeth. He was a low-ranking noble without a fiefdom, taking on this mission for a chance at advancement. He just had to reach out and grab Ulrika, who was close. But Ulrika dodged just as a crazed knight dastard yelled out behind him. His hand, reaching out, pathetically swiped through the air. But it didn't matter. Ulrika's army was far behind, and they were right in front of her. Block! Block it! As Ulrika hastily retreated, the knights and scribes beside her finally realized the situation and moved, desperately throwing themselves into the fray. But the delegation's swordsmanship was extraordinary. They targeted the exposed weak spots of the armored knights, striking from all sides. They were clearly swordsmen who had properly learned short sword techniques from the Swordsmanship Guild. No matter how well armored, one cannot be completely protected. When 4 of them stabbed with short swords from all sides, the knight fell with a scream. The scribes, too, were no different from the knights. They fell at once. In an instant, those blocking the way were gone. Even Ulrika had to sweat in such a situation. And then Johann arrived. Who? As the sound of a sword-piercing flesh came from somewhere, one of the raiders looked down at his body in surprise. A long sword was embedded in him. Johann had thrown it as he charged. The raider at the front immediately fell, breathless. You son of a bitch! Another raider cursed and lunged at Johann. Johann, who had thrown his long sword, was unarmed. Despite wearing thick chainmail, he would have been no swordsman if he couldn't handle such an opponent. Johann blocked the raider's short sword with the armored part of his arm, then struck with all his might. The raider's skull shattered, and he died instantly. Ulrika, watching from behind, widened her eyes. She somehow felt she knew how he got that title. Get behind me! They can't kill you! Understanding Johann's words, Ulrika clung behind him. It would be pointless if she was captured and used as a hostage. Kill them! Capture them! The raiders screamed frantically. They knew their situation too well. If they failed to capture Ulrika before the approaching soldiers arrived, they would suffer a fate worse than death. Johann looked around as the raiders attacked from all directions. Fighting and holding them off was one thing, but it meant nothing if Ulrika was taken. Johann kicked a tent pole. It was a temporary, open tent, but the pole wasn't shallowly planted enough to be pulled out by a kick. The tent collapsed forward, obstructing the raiders. Johann then picked up the pole and started swinging it at the approaching raiders. The long and massive pole was a weapon in itself. The raiders, armed only with short swords, couldn't penetrate inside. Cursed by the devil, the lot of them. One of the raiders muttered this. To him, Johann seemed like someone who had made a pact with the devil. How else could such supernatural strength be possible? The castle had more than just a main gate, there was also a secret door. This concealed door, not easily visible from the outside, was a crucial strategic point, used for the clandestine departure of messengers or as an escape route for the feudal lord. One of the roles of this secret door was to serve as a pathway for raiding parties. No one was foolish enough to launch an attack right through the main gate. The cavalry inside the castle cautiously emerged through this secret door. Their objective was straightforward. If the delegation managed to ambush and capture Ulrika, they were to swoop in and drag them into the castle, creating a diversion. But then, the cavalry, turning a corner, were shocked. The situation was undeniably odd. There was no sign of the delegation, and Ulrika's army was ominously close to the castle walls, exuding a threatening aura. To the Rhine Gate! Escape through the Rhine Gate! Divert! Divert! Thanks to the leaders' quick thinking, they didn't charge but instead turned their horses around. Returning from an ambush via a different secret door was the norm. They quickly veered towards the opposite secret door. Gerdolfnim! Command! Kill them all. Every last one. Gerdolf growled fiercely, realizing why Johann had led the mercenaries here. It must be to kill them. Gerdolf charged with a savage laugh, relishing the sight of the enemy's faces turning pale in surprise. Why would you fight so recklessly? Suitlik checked Johann's arm, relieved to find no broken muscles or bones. It was a miracle that he was unscathed after such madness. I needed a long weapon, but there was nothing at hand. The most foolish reason I've ever heard. Relying on brute strength is foolish. I'm just a bit tired, otherwise fine. No need to worry. Suitek looked exasperated. Even the strongest man should be hurt after such an ordeal. Yet, Johann seemed unharmed except for slight fatigue. If not divine blessing, then what? What about Ulrika Gong? Furious to the core, preparing for retaliation. She's been looking for you. Let's go together. No. I'll stay here. She won't harm you, just wants to thank you. I'd rather not. You go ahead. Suitek did not want to meet Ulrika. While Johann had much to gain politically, Suitek had little interest in Ulrika. Rather, Ulrika might demand too much from Suitek. Ulrika Gong wishes to see you. Wait. Let me persuade Suitek. She only wishes to see you, though. Suitek's expression was complex. Not wanting to meet, yet feeling oddly about not being invited. Then, I shall go alone. Just be careful not to get devoured. Near Ulrika's tent, surviving raiders were tied to pillars. They were soon to be executed in the most brutal manner in front of the castle. Sir, welcome. I am sincerely grateful for your achievements. The furious knights ceased their swearing and respectfully greeted Johann, indicating the significance of his recent heroics. Had Johann not alone confronted and defeated the raiders, Ulrika might have truly been taken hostage. The mere thought sent a chill down one's spine. Johann looked at the knights in puzzlement. He had not disarmed before entering. Shouldn't I surrender my weapon? You have been permitted to enter as is. Johann entered, perplexed. Inside the tent, only Ulrika was present. She looked up from her map and scribblings as Johann entered. You must have something you want, right? Something you desire. Did you set out without even thinking about it? In response to Ulrika's words, Johann replied with an indifferent expression. I don't particularly have anything I want. I just want to finish what I came here for. Johann had no ulterior motives in going after Ulrika, and he didn't bother thinking about what to aim for in that situation. Johann wasn't that clever. Ulrika's expression became uncomfortable upon hearing his words. People who are meticulous in their cost-benefit analysis tend to feel uneasy if the other party doesn't align with their expectations. From Ulrika's perspective, she didn't appreciate Johann not demanding something in return first. The feeling of being in debt hadn't disappeared. You can speak freely. It's okay. Unlike last time, this is a public occasion, so I will uphold propriety. Ulrika's discomfort grew even more from Johann's words. Johann was puzzled. Wasn't his response supposed to satisfy Ulrika just now? Go ahead and tell me. Actually, I have the tax rights in Heincut town. Ulrika pondered silently, then spoke after 10 seconds. Tell Stephen. Not gonna happen. Actually, I came to negotiate about that. Damn it. I wondered why you joined the expedition. Ulrika realized her misjudgment. She should have known when her foolish brother spent all his money on mercenaries. It wasn't for military glory, but to sell his fiefdom rights profitably. Sir Stephen agreed. I intend to sell these tax rights back to you. To me? Yes. Aren't you the rightful owner of this fiefdom? Skip the formalities. I'm not fooled. What if I don't want to buy? If you refuse, I'll have to find others. Bishop Mosho, or maybe a trade guild. Many desire these tax rights. I hope you understand this is a gesture of goodwill to return your rightful authority. Johann's relaxed tone was irritatingly effective. But Johann was right. Letting the tax rights fall into others' hands out of spite would be a loss. And one more thing. If you buy the tax rights, I ask that you spare Stephen's life. Did that guy present his ass to you? And that bitch too, why can't she take care of these assholes without causing a fuss? Ulrika finally exploded. Johann's coddling of Stephen was infuriatingly incomprehensible to her. She fumed until she realized. She was jealous. Her insignificant brother had a knight she lacked. He didn't present any ass. I'm just trying to keep a promise. Fine. Say I buy the tax rights. I will give you some money. Then what? What if I kill Stephen afterward? Then that can't be helped. Johann responded calmly, surprising Ulrika. What? I'm not Stephen's father, nor can I protect him forever. If he is to be killed, so be it. If your highness wishes to break the promise, feel free. I won't interfere. My promise with Stephen didn't extend that far. Ulrika felt an inexplicable sense of defeat at Johann's words. Though she held the decision, she couldn't counter Johann's argument. She couldn't bring herself to say, "All right. I'll spare him. He was supposed to die long ago anyway. Tell him not to loiter in my sight again. He must have learned a lot even without my saying." If I thought that guy could learn, I wouldn't have tried to kill him. Ulrika took several deep breaths and spoke. Now that we've discussed your matters, let's talk about mine. Weren't you curious why I called you? Yes, I was very curious. Johann had a polite way of being irritating. Ulrika said, holding back her annoyance. Are you interested in receiving a fiefdom? Wait. Before you get too interested, listen. I don't like to lie to those who receive my land. You won't just receive it. You'll have to fight for it a few times. Like attacking that castle. Yes. Chapter 59. Ulrika nodded her head. Johann wasn't surprised either, as he had suspected it. I also need to take care of the eyes of my vassals, my feudal lords. You can receive it after a certain amount of achievements. Of course, if it's a merit, you should be able to achieve it sufficiently. Ulrika pointed on the map while speaking. The problem is what comes next. If we're lucky, it'll end there and a fiefdom will be granted, but it's likely not to end with just that. Sangdaju Castle is a territory of the Emperor. Immediate support may not come, but as soon as there's room to breathe, an army will be sent immediately. Are you prepared for that? At Johann's question, Ulrika burst into laughter. Of course. Why would I do such a thing without being prepared? Besides, the Emperor is already a toothless old lion. The Emperor's fiefdoms were divided into the northern, central, and southern parts of the Catalian peninsula. Although vast when combined, managing such divided fiefdoms required much more effort. Mercenaries employed by the Emperor at great expense had to be constantly on the move. Ambitious regents and feudal lords, lords from neighboring kingdoms, and cities constantly trying to break free from the Emperor. Right now, the Emperor's main forces are tied down in the southern part of the empire. The forceful attempt to warn the southern feudal lords about their treacherous activities backfired. Even though some nobles were executed without trial and the Emperor feigned ignorance, the southern feudal lords were outraged by this unprecedented and outrageous act, eventually leading to a rebellion. The bewildered Emperor tried to diplomatically resolve the situation, but the lords responded by beheading the envoys and sending them back. War was the only option left. The point, Johann, is that the Emperor doesn't have the luxury to pay attention here. By the time he does, everything here will be over. Then he can send an army or not, as he pleases. Reinforcements will come. Reinforcements. Didn't you notice? The King of Erlands is supporting us. Since Johann had already heard this from Suitlig, he wasn't too surprised. He would have been more surprised if such actions were taken without such a background. You knew then. It's obvious with Kardirian too soon to die. Why surprised? It's not a widely known story, but if you're to become a lord, you should be interested in such affairs. Kardirian too was old and ill. Even his most loyal followers didn't think he would live long. At most a few years. When the emperor dies, an electoral meeting of the princes is held to choose a new emperor. Kardirian II's family, heavily in debt due to fruitless wars, was unlikely to be chosen in the next vote. The emperor's intentions were clear. He intended to bypass the electoral process and pass the throne to his eldest heir. Of course, the princes had no intention of just watching this happen. If the emperor disregards custom and law, we will act by force. Does the King of Erlands desire the crown of the Empire Emperor? I would never be so bold, and probably push a sibling or relative to be the emperor. Anyway, after hearing all this, you wouldn't back out, would you? I accept. Upon hearing Johann's response, Ulrika was momentarily surprised, but soon her face brightened. She had secretly thought Johann might refuse. Are you serious? Did you think I would refuse? It's an offer with no reason to refuse. How would I know? It's hard to understand knights who do all sorts of foolish things for the sake of their damned honor. I didn't say it was for honor. Anyway, could you please tell me about the fiefdom I'll be receiving? If you accept, you'll likely receive the title of a feudal lord or baron. It'll include the town of Heincut and maybe 2 or 3 others. I'm thinking of this area. Johann nodded as Ulrika pointed out the locations. The places weren't bad. They weren't golden fiefdoms, but neither were they worthless. Johann now understood why Jessen had wandered so much. In a small fiefdom, no matter how much you squeezed, there was a limit to the money you could make. Even feeding and clothing the troops with that money was difficult. In contrast, one successful raid or hostage-taking in war could yield tens or hundreds of times more revenue. He understood why Jessen was obsessed with roaming. With complex thoughts, Johann shook his head. He needed to focus on the immediate challenges first. If he didn't distinguish himself in the upcoming battle, he might not even receive that small fiefdom. After the dishonorable surprise attack ended in failure, the Lord of Sangdaju Castle sent an envoy once again. The message was that the recent incident was carried out without his orders, for which he sincerely apologized, and mentioned that showing mercy would bring divine blessings. Ulrika Gong responded to the envoy by killing him outright. Send it. Then, an arrow with a letter attached flew over the castle. What did it say? It said if they open the gates and prostrate themselves, we promise a painless death. How merciful! It was clear that the Lord of Sangdaju Castle was moved by this mercy, as he immediately had his soldiers prepare for battle. However, the situation in Sangdaju Castle was different than Count Jarpen's. The faces of the soldiers showed evident fatigue and hunger. Please spare us, my lord. Just spare our lives. The Castellan ordered us, we had no choice. Those who attempted the assault and were captured were dragged forward. Composed of lower nobility and mercenaries, they seemed to sense the fate that awaited them. Horrific screams echoed in all directions. These sounds made those within the castle walls foresee their own fate. Normally, surrender would ensure the preservation of lives, but this time it was different. Having broken the customs of surrender with a surprise attack, it was undeniable that everyone, noble or commoner, deserved death. And Ulrika appeared to be ablaze with the determination to kill everyone. Was the conversation fruitful? It was. They promised a fiefdom. As expected. Worth a try. Suitlug was not surprised. Johann, though young and inexperienced, had shown enough to attract the nobility's attention. Especially someone like Ulrika, having seen her in person. It seemed decent, so I accepted. Well done. Not bad. Although Suitlug disliked entanglements with the nobility, Johann's case was different. As a knight aspiring to be a feudal lord, it was necessary to grab any opportunity. And Ulrika was indeed a good opportunity. I'm somewhat reluctant to get involved in a mess caused by King Erland's greed. Where in the world is there a game not started by the noble's greed? It's about which side you're on, Johann. Being in the west of the empire, it's unavoidable to be influenced by King Erland's, so it's not bad to choose a side early. And if it turns disadvantageous, why not switch sides? Is it all right to switch like that? Why not? It was not uncommon for nobles to switch sides, as long as there was a reasonable justification. Especially for a young, power-lacking knight like Johann. You'd be welcome on the other side too. Don't worry needlessly. Now, think about how to earn distinction. Have any plans? If I had a good plan, I would have acted on it by now. It wasn't just Johann, but also the knights under Ulrika who hesitated. Despite their bold threats, they didn't rush into an attack. Ulrika knew well that pushing soldiers without proper preparation could lead to heavy losses, even against a small castle. The most common and effective siege tactic was to surround the enemy and wait for them to crumble. The number of people executed earlier seemed low. Are you executing them in batches? Yes. It's a good strategy, but it seems a bit weak for making the enemy crumble. It's hard to predict when they will fall apart. Suitlug exhaled. Each day was getting colder. The ones inside were shivering, but it would be even harder for those outside. So, you see. What's with that scheming look? You said you owed me a debt. No. Suitlug was incredulous. Of course, he had incurred a debt, but he didn't expect to be asked to repay it so soon. All right. What do you want? I heard you summoned fog in the last expedition. Can you do it now? It's possible. But the river is far, so preparation is needed, and it will take some time. As long as it's possible. Planning a surprise attack in the fog? Not a bad idea, but the enemy isn't foolish. They'll know that a full-scale attack is likely in the fog. With fog, attackers could approach the walls easily, but the defenders could anticipate this as well. Moreover, launching a coordinated full-scale attack in the fog wasn't feasible unless the troops were exceptionally elite. Ah. That's all right. I wasn't planning a full-scale attack. I don't even have command authority. If it happens, I was thinking of picking a dozen men for a surprise attack. Where to? Johann pointed at the walls. Suitlug's mouth fell open. He hadn't expected such a plan, despite the defenders being outnumbered. Brave or foolish? Planning to climb the walls using the fog as cover. With fewer numbers, we won't be detected, right? You won't be detected. But once you're on the wall, expect a warm welcome. The soldiers on the wall look tired and frightened. They aren't that disciplined, and in their current state, they'll likely flee easily. Suitlug looked troubled. He didn't want to waste precious magic just to kill a young knight. Even with a dozen men, could they push back the soldiers on the wall and shake up the inside? Well, you can take care of your own life. If things go south, just break down the wall and run. What kind of nonsense are you talking about? Johann had no intention of creating fog just once. He had to do it for at least several days in a row. At first, seeing the fog would cause tension. But what if it persists for several days and everything remains calm? Being human, the tension would inevitably ease. So, the fog must come and go for several days. Suitlug let out a groan. An unknowing knight dastard was trying to overwork him with this magic. However, using such a ruse was a better tactic than creating fog just once. It would catch the opponent off guard. The problem was not with Suitlug, but with the other knights. None volunteered despite hearing Johann's plan. Isn't there anyone who will join me to defeat them? The knights remained silent. They were not repulsed by Johann, the newcomer, nor did they want to embarrass him. Johann's plan felt too reckless to them. Even the Empire Knights, desiring honor and glory, did not want to enter a situation that blatantly led to death. If no one steps forward, I'll have to go alone. You won't be alone, sir. I will accompany you. Gerdolf spoke as if questioning the absurdity. Then Sir Inno was shocked. They had different places to go, why would they go together? What are you talking about? That's not a place for you to intervene. You're mistaken, let me tell you. I will go with you. Gerdolf ignored his father's words. Sir Inno didn't know how to react and just gaped. Thank you, Sir Gerdolf. Are the other knights lacking courage? Is Sir Johann the only brave person under my command? Ulrika provoked them, but the knights stood firm. Ulrika asked Johann. What about taking Stephen with you? I'd rather fight with one hand tied. However, the issue of companions was unexpectedly resolved easily. The mercenaries brought by Johann volunteered en masse upon hearing the news. The mercenaries under Ulrika, already present, clicked their tongues at the recklessness. No matter how much you love gold, what's the use if you die? Don't do something crazy. I've never seen anyone who fights recklessly live long. Quit now. Even the knights are avoiding this. However, the mercenaries following Johann scoffed in response. You say that because you haven't seen our employer fight. Chapter 60.1. What are you talking about? Do you think your employer is some kind of god? Well, his power was indeed enormous, like that of a god. But still, he bleeds when stabbed with a spear and dies when hit by an arrow. It's insane to think that with just those men, they would climb the city walls. No matter how much one loves gold, it's madness. Experienced mercenaries said that, indicating the riskiness of this attempt. Yet, the mercenaries following Johann were unshaken as if they were enchanted. After all, faith is not rational and is something that cannot be explained to others. The mercenaries who had followed Johann from the city held a strong belief. They had faith that they would never lose if they followed this knight. Such unwavering faith doesn't just emerge from kicking down giant tent poles. It develops through continuous collaboration, syncing movements, and experiencing each action side by side. Mercenaries unaware of this thought those participating in the surprise attack seemed mad. The weakest part of the castle was its gate. It was natural, as it was originally made for people to pass through. Thus, various methods were employed to protect the gate, like elevating its position, digging a moat below, or building a small bastion nearby. Sangdaju Castle wasn't that well built. The moat was shallow, and the towers were crude. But still, a castle is a castle. A direct assault on the gate could even turn Johann into a piece of meat. There's fog rolling in. Suetlik, who had turned pale preparing magic, came out and said. From a distance, fog was enveloping the area around the castle. The sudden dense fog caused confusion among the soldiers on the walls. When will we attack? We'll repeat this a few times and then go in just before sunrise. Wouldn't the middle of the night be better? It might be harder for us if it's too dark. Considering the terrain and all. Johann thought the time just before sunrise was when people are most off guard. Others thought of night, but to Johann, night seemed more dangerous. With a shield on his back, and a mace, long sword, and dagger at his waist. To keep themselves light, the assault team minimized their baggage. Johann even considered removing his chainmail due to the noise, but decided it wasn't necessary. Johann led from the front, cutting through the fog. It seemed easier to climb the wall before the break of dawn. Strong grip wasn't just useful for wielding weapons or tearing off a troll's arm. It was also effective for climbing walls. The mercenaries following from below admired Johann's speed in climbing. Climbing up the wall barehanded, and so swiftly at that. Now they understood why he had refused the cumbersome siege ladders. With such strength, they were unnecessary. Now, all that was needed was for Johann to throw down a rope. Oh. Reaching the top, Johann, leaning against the wall, froze upon seeing two soldiers yawning and sitting there. The location of the climbable wall was not chosen randomly. Behind it was Gerdolf's effort. Gerdolf surprisingly had a talent for interrogation. After interrogating the captured raiders who attempted a surprise attack, they became ragged and spilled the secrets of the castle. The location of the hidden doors they used to come out of, the rough layout of the castle. Johann tried his best to memorize these details in his head. However, Johann was powerless over the soldiers' deployment. It changed frequently, and now that the raiders were captured, it would have changed again. Relying on it could lead to seeing blood. But to run into them as soon as climbing up. There was definitely no luck. What? The sitting soldier blinked and looked at Johann. He was exhausted from the dense fog and staying up all night. Johann, suddenly appearing over the wall, must have seemed out of place. His slow reaction cost him his life. The mace swung, and the soldier collapsed. The soldier next to him was startled and scrambled for his spear, but Johann stepped on it first. Atta, CK. One blow to the lungs, one to the neck. What Kegel taught Johann most intensively were the body's vital points. An assassin couldn't kill openly like a knight in battle. They often had to kill quietly in the darkness. It was this technique that was effective then. Not slashing with a sword, but quickly stabbing a hard-to-hear vital point with a dagger and silencing them. Guho. The soldier gasped and gurgled. Johann pushed him aside and checked the surroundings. There were no others. As the rope descended, the mercenaries sighed in relief. They had been anxious about the sudden disappearance. As all the mercenaries climbed onto the wall, Johann gave the order. Go to the secret door and open it. The main gate was too large and noisy, drawing inevitable attention. In contrast, the secret doors in the wall were relatively free from such concerns. They were small and concealed enough to be unnoticed from the outside. If they could take the secret door before the enemies noticed and bring in the soldiers from outside, it would be over. Isn't it too quiet? Are they all sleeping? We haven't touched them for days, so it's likely. Johann and the mercenaries ran through the castle courtyard, the eerie silence making their hearts race. As they moved towards the secret door, a shout erupted from behind. It's an attack! It's an attack! The wall has been taken! Johann and the mercenaries, who had not yet taken the wall, were shocked by the outcry. Have those guys gone mad? No. They must have discovered the missing soldiers. Move fast! Johann urged the mercenaries. With tense expressions, they nodded. From now on, it wouldn't be surprising to encounter enemies anywhere. Chapter 60.2. Who are you? Identify yourself. The opponent Johann encountered did not attack first but asked for his identity, as the fog was becoming denser. It was difficult to precisely identify who the other party was, even at a somewhat close distance. Attack! At Johann's command, the mercenaries charged fiercely. Like a pack of wolves led by a lion, they swiftly overpowered their prey. The soldiers, thinking they were allies, fell with screams. Move! Unless you want to be hit by arrows. The mercenaries didn't need Johan's urging, they knew what was at stake. Inside the fortress walls was a smaller citadel. Compared to the outer fortress, it was embarrassingly small, merely a tower of 2 or 3 floors, but it was fully equipped. Towers and paths for attacking enemies who had breached the gates, the walls, and the courtyard. In the current situation, it wouldn't be surprising for arrows to be flying. Sir Knight. This doesn't seem to be the secret passage. The thick fog confused not only the enemies but also Johan and the mercenaries. Instead of the secret passage, they encountered an open, lower gate of the inner fortress. The gate of the inner fortress, on the opposite side of the front gate they were facing. They had come in the completely wrong direction. Johan pondered. Should he turn back to find the secret passage, or find a suitable spot in the walls to escape now? But there was no time to hesitate. Soldiers began emerging from the open inner fortress gate. Luckily, the fog seemed to have concealed Johan's presence. Look, that man seems like a noble. Gerdolf pointed to a man among the 20 soldiers, his lavish attire and commanding presence suggesting he was at least a captain. Right. Let's capture him. Johan made a decision based on intuition. The situation was chaotically confusing for both sides due to the fog. Kill them. With a short battle cry, Johan charged forward, shield in hand. Surprised by the sudden appearance of an enemy in the fog, some defenders dropped their weapons in shock. With the sharp sound of metal, a spear was deflected. The distance closed, and a mace crushed someone's bones. 2 fell, bleeding. Regardless of the thick fog, Johan overpowered his opponents. His brute strength felled them with a single blow after deflecting their attacks. The soldiers began to succumb to fear, amplified by the disorienting fog. Fight back! They aren't many. The man who appeared to be the captain shouted, but already 5 or 6 were sneaking away to escape. The situation was unclear, but it seemed the fortress wall had been breached, and soldiers had made it this far. Maybe it was better to flee? Making that decision easier was a knight. Gerdolf swung his great sword, decapitating a hesitating soldier. A spray of blood spread fear among those nearby. Move aside. Or die. Gerdolf stared down the soldiers, speaking in a blunt tone, which was more effective. The soldiers involuntarily stepped back. Protect me. Execute anyone who flees. Anyone who flees. As Johan and Gerdolf, 2 knights, carved through the soldiers like cutting through waves, the defense captain turned pale. They thought they could hold them off with their superior numbers, but the momentum was unexpectedly strong. You. Run and call for reinforcements, fast. Gasro. Make good on the silver you and your friends were paid. Stop them. Understood, sir. Even as soldiers were being defeated and fleeing, there were those near the defense captain who held their ground. They wore different outfits from the soldiers and were armed with long swords. It was rare for poor soldiers or mercenaries to handle long swords. Spears or shields were more convenient. The mere use of a long sword was evidence of some degree of training. Gasro stepped forward, long sword in hand. The crossguards of the long swords held by the men all had identical decorations. The fencing guild often revealed their origins through such decorations, so these men were clearly from the same guild. Johan felt tense, recalling what Kegel had said. Of course, there would be varying levels of skill within the guild, but a proficient swordsman could be dangerous. Johan attacked first, to gauge his opponent's skill. From behind his shield, Johan's mace suddenly lashed out, striking the opponent's torso diagonally. The swordsman, smugly, sliced his long sword sideways, deflecting the opponent's strength and changing direction to seize the offensive. With the sound of a skull shattering, the swordsman fell.